Greetings once more, my fellow explorers of the human soul. Our journey through the landscape of consciousness, guided by the insights of Eckhart Tolle and the depths of analytical psychology, continues. We have dissected the ego, confronted the shadow, and contemplated the ultimate aims of spiritual enlightenment and self-realization. Today, our focus narrows to a particularly pervasive and insidious aspect of the human condition, suffering. Mr. Tolle speaks compellingly of what he terms mind-made suffering, a concept that resonates deeply with the human experience of distress. Yet I find myself compelled to delve deeper, to inquire into the very structure and dynamics of this suffering, to understand its origins and its persistent influence.
And this is where neurosis enters the picture.
For it is here, in the realm of psychological distress, that my concept of neurosis offers a unique and, I believe, indispensable perspective. Let us then dissect this suffering, not merely to transcend it, but to understand its profound psychological roots and integrate its lessons into the tapestry of our conscious lives.
How does Tolle understand suffering?
Mr. Tolle, with his characteristic clarity and directness, views suffering as primarily originating from what he calls mind-made suffering. For him, this suffering is not an inherent part of our existence, but rather a byproduct of our identification with the egoic mind, its incessant stream of thoughts, and its fundamental resistance to the present moment. He posits that the vast majority of human unhappiness, anxiety, and distress is not caused by external circumstances themselves, but by our internal reaction to them, by the stories our minds tell us about them, and by our refusal to accept what is.
The primary sources of this suffering.
Tolle meticulously outlines these sources. Foremost among them is what he terms mental time travel, the mind's compulsive tendency to dwell on past regrets, grievances and traumas, or to project into the future with anxieties, fears, and expectations. This constant oscillation between past and future prevents us from fully inhabiting the present moment, which he asserts is the only point of access to true peace and joy. Furthermore, he highlights the mind's inherent tendency towards resistance. When we resist reality, when we internally say no to a situation, a feeling, or a thought, we create an inner conflict that manifests as suffering. This resistance is a core function of the ego, which seeks to control and dominate, and when it cannot, it generates negativity.
His solution to this?
His method for releasing mind-made suffering is elegantly simple, yet profoundly transformative, through presence, acceptance, and disidentification from thought. Tolle instructs us to become the watcher of our thoughts and emotions, to observe them without judgment or identification. By bringing conscious awareness to the mental chatter, by recognizing that you are not your thoughts, one can create a space, a gap between the observer and the observed. In this space, the suffering loses its power. By radically accepting what is in the present moment without resistance, one aligns oneself with the flow of life, thereby dissolving the inner conflict that fuels suffering. This, he believes, is the path to liberation from the mind's tyranny, allowing for a return to the peaceful state of presence, where suffering is seen as an illusion created by an unconscious mind.
Your concept of neurosis goes deeper, doesn't it?
Indeed. Now let us turn to my own understanding of psychological suffering, which I primarily articulated through the concept of neurosis. For me, neurosis is not merely a collection of symptoms, but a profound psychic disturbance arising from a conflict between conscious and unconscious elements within the individual. It is often a signal, a distress call from the psyche, indicating a one-sided development of the personality, where vital unconscious contents have been repressed or neglected, leading to an imbalance.
It stems from repression.
Neurosis, in my view, often stems from the repression of essential unconscious contents. These might include aspects of the shadow, our disowned qualities, both negative and positive, or the autonomous activity of complexes, those emotionally charged constellations of ideas and images that operate outside conscious control. When these vital parts of the psyche are denied expression or integration, they do not simply disappear, They gather energy in the unconscious and manifest as symptoms: anxiety, depression, phobias, obsessions, or physical ailments.
The neurosis serves a purpose then.
The neurosis, paradoxically, serves a purpose. It is the psyche's attempt to force the individual to confront what has been neglected, to integrate what has been split off, and thereby to move towards a more complete and balanced state of being. It is in essence a call for psychological growth and integration, a demand from the self for attention. The symptom is a messenger, not an enemy.
And healing requires engagement, not transcendence.
Precisely. My approach to healing neurosis is not one of mere symptom suppression, but of conscious confrontation with the unconscious. Through methods such as dream analysis, active imagination, and careful introspection, the aim is to bring the unconscious material, the repressed complexes, the unlived life, the archetypal patterns, into conscious awareness. By understanding the symbolic language of the psyche, by engaging in a dialogue with these inner forces, the individual can begin to differentiate themselves from the compulsive grip of the neurosis. This process of healing involves integrating the once repressed energies and insights into the conscious personality, thereby transforming the neurosis from a source of suffering into a catalyst for profound personal growth and expanded consciousness. It is a process of making the unconscious conscious, of reclaiming lost parts of the self, and thereby achieving a greater degree of psychological freedom and wholeness, moving towards individuation. The neurosis, therefore, is not an enemy to be vanquished, but a messenger to be understood.
Both address psychological distress, yet differently.
Let us now draw a more precise comparison between Tolle's concept of mind-made suffering and my own theory of neurosis. Both concepts at their core endeavor to explain the pervasive psychological distress that afflicts humanity. Both acknowledge that a significant portion of our suffering originates not from external circumstances, but from internal dynamics, from the way our psyche processes and reacts to reality. They both point to a fundamental disconnect or imbalance within the individual that leads to unhappiness and inner turmoil.
Yet the distinctions are significant.
However, the distinctions, while subtle, are profoundly significant. Tolle's mind-made suffering is primarily attributed to identification with the egoic mind, its thoughts, and its resistance to the present moment. The solution, as he prescribes, lies in transcendence, in observing the mind's activity with conscious presence, thereby disidentifying from its compulsive patterns and allowing its charge to dissipate. This approach is powerful in its simplicity and directness, offering a means to detach from the immediate experience of suffering and find a measure of inner peace. It addresses the phenomenon of suffering, its immediate felt experience, and offers a method for its release through a shift in awareness.
While neurosis addresses structure and dynamics.
My concept of neurosis, however, delves deeper into the structure and dynamics of this suffering. Neurosis is not merely a product of mental identification, it is a psychic disturbance arising from a conflict between conscious and unconscious elements, often a one-sided development of the personality. It is a signal that vital, unconscious contents, such as repressed aspects of the shadow, unintegrated complexes, or neglected archetypal needs, are seeking expression and integration. The suffering in this view is not just mind-made in the sense of thought patterns, but psyche-made in the sense of a deeper structural imbalance that demands attention and resolution.
Mind-made suffering as symptom, not cause.
Thus, while Tolle encourages us to observe the mental patterns that create suffering, I would urge us to also investigate the deeper unconscious conflicts that give rise to these patterns. Tolle's mind-made suffering could be seen as the conscious manifestation or symptom of an underlying neurosis. The incessant mental chatter, the dwelling on past and future, the resistance to the present, these are often the ego's attempts to cope with or defend against unintegrated unconscious material. When a complex is constellated, for instance, it can generate a torrent of anxious thoughts, obsessive worries, or depressive ruminations, precisely the mind-made suffering Tolle describes. But merely observing these thoughts without addressing the underlying complex might be akin to treating a fever without diagnosing the infection.
Presence creates space, but integration heals.
From my perspective, Tolle's approach offers a valuable method for managing the immediate experience of suffering by cultivating presence. This presence can indeed create a space for detachment from the mental turmoil. However, true healing and lasting transformation from neurosis require more than this. It demands a conscious confrontation with the unconscious, an understanding of the specific complexes and archetypal patterns at play, and a diligent effort to integrate these repressed contents into the conscious personality. This process leads not just to a temporary cessation of suffering, but to a fundamental restructuring of the psyche, resulting in a more robust, resilient, and whole individual.
How do we integrate these perspectives?
In concluding our exploration of Eckhart Tolle's insights into mind-made suffering and its relationship to my concept of neurosis, I find a rich tapestry of complementary perspectives. Tolle's emphasis on conscious presence, acceptance, and disidentification from thought offers a powerful and accessible tool for many in our modern world. It provides a direct path to alleviating much of the immediate psychological distress that arises from our mental habits, offering a much-needed respite and a glimpse into a state of inner peace. For this, his contribution to spiritual well-being is indeed significant.
Yet depth work remains essential.
However, from the perspective of analytical psychology, while presence can indeed create the necessary space for suffering to be observed without immediate reaction, the journey towards true healing and psychological wholeness often requires a deeper engagement. The mind-made suffering Tolle describes is, in many instances, the conscious manifestation of an underlying neurosis, a psychic disturbance rooted in unintegrated unconscious conflicts. To truly resolve this suffering, one must not only observe the mental patterns, but also delve into the deeper psychological dynamics, understand their origins, their symbolic meaning, and their influence on the personality.
Both perspectives together create wholeness.
Therefore, I propose that the most comprehensive and transformative approach involves integrating both perspectives. Tolle's teachings can cultivate the presence and awareness necessary to observe mind-made suffering without being overwhelmed by it. This conscious observation can then serve as the initial step, creating an opening for the deeper work of confronting and assimilating the underlying neuroses and complexes. By bringing the contents of these unconscious conflicts into conscious awareness, by understanding their archetypal roots and personal history, we can transform them from sources of suffering into wellsprings of wisdom and personal growth. It is through this integration of present moment awareness with profound psychological depth that we can move beyond merely coping with suffering to truly healing and transforming its roots, thereby achieving a more complete and authentic sense of self. May your journey through suffering lead you to profound self-discovery and lasting integration. Farewell for now, my friend.
Become who you truly are.